Billiken fans, welcome back. It's Zach Miller and Peter Hale. This is the Midtown Madness Podcast. Before we get going, thank you so much for listening. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Pete, before I get into the ad read, we got to thank one of our listeners for pointing out that I am not as loud as I think I am on the show.
No, I think you were relying on your natural voice
Yes.
and not your equipment as much. And yeah, we do appreciate that. I think we've got our levels right now.
Yeah, I've just kind of bumped it up about 25% in post just to cover the bases. I figure I don't think it's going to blow anybody's speakers, but considering that sometimes I am eating the microphone. But yeah, thank you again for the heads up there. Pete, this episode and the whole season of the Midtown Madness Podcast, as you know, is brought to you by Two Men and a Garden. We are in the deep recesses of the offseason, Pete. This fan base needs a commitment in the worst way, but this fan base could definitely use a couple jars of Two Men and a Garden salsa. Makes everything better. They've got all the flavors to suit your individual salsa preferences. You can pick up their many products at any local grocery store or online at twomeninthegarden.com. Which, if you're particular about your salsa, that's where you got to go. You really got to go to their website. They've got all their flavors there. Whereas if you head over to Deerberg's or Schnucks, they may not have a certain kind. Follow them on social media at Two Men Salsa on Instagram and Twitter. Pete, this is going to be a very interesting episode. I don't think either of us are sure where it's going to go, but we know there's going to be a discussion, and we're going to get deep into the cornfields of the tall grass. I don't know what to call it, but we're going to get into a couple Billiken what ifs. But first, we got to talk a little news, not a whole lot.
Yeah, a little bit of news. And the first one, Zach, we just named a new band director, and the band has been through quite a season, I would say. And I'm wondering if this kind of just wraps it all up and puts all of that drama that we kind of covered, feels like forever ago, but not all that long ago, if it puts it all behind us.
Yeah, I don't know. I would like it to, and I'm sure Slew would like it too. It seems like the people that are really leading the charge out of the band and have quit the band are serious. Obviously, they've been playing at Humphreys before games as the house band, which is neat. But obviously, we'd like to see them back in the stands, playing during games. I think, you know what, man, like, look, at the end of the day, did the band make more of it and maybe a little disingenuous? I think so. But the athletic department needs to really take a look at how they are scheduling the band. Just literally give them a schedule, start of the season, and don't deviate from it. It's not that hard.
Right. Yeah. I mean, how dramatic was it? I have no idea. I just know that it seems like their conditions were a little bit worse than they were historically. And anytime you've got things going one way and things get a little bit worse in the margins, that makes their day-to-day more difficult. I definitely understand the gripes, but nonetheless, they've named a new director, Grant Unnerstall, to lead the SLU Pep Band. He's assistant band director in the Rockwood School District, and he'll start with SLU on August 1st. And just to give a little bit more about his background, he's got 10 years of teaching experience. He's been an adjunct professor of music at Maryville. He taught at UMKC's Conservatory of Music and has served in band director roles in other school districts as well. He's a 2014 graduate of Illinois State and got his Master of Music and Doctor of Philosophy, actually, from the University of Miami Frost School of Music and UMKC Conservatory for the doctorate. So yeah, I mean, like, he's got a nice background here. He's what 2014, that makes him about 9 years younger than me. So he's in his early 30s, and seems like a pretty good hire for the role.
Yeah, I think, anybody who's going to come in and be passionate about, Billiken pep band, Billiken basketball. And I think it's interesting because I, I mean, is it not the first band director that didn't go to, I mean, I don't know about Dr. Biscala, or isn't, an active faculty at SLU?
I know we've got multiple band members screaming at us right now, and I have no idea, honestly. I unfortunately I don't know a whole lot about the history or the ins and outs of the band. Got a little bit of education when all that drama was going on this past season, but I'll be honest with you, I really don't know. I really don't know.
Also, as we all know, I'm a big fan of the Mighty Ducks, and if you put his first initial and his last name together, it's Gunnerstall, which is the villain kid from Mighty Ducks 2. Thank you for playing. Um, on that note, let's move over to the cheerleading squad, who named a new head coach in Grace Schultz.
Yeah, and again, cheerleading is another one of those. I don't know a whole lot
Yeah.
about the history of it. I know there were some changes in how they structure the program over the years, and in terms of blending it with the dance team, separating it. For a while they had male cheerleaders, for a while they didn't. Um, but yeah. Anyway, she was the volunteer assistant this past year, and she actually is a graduate of SLU, and has a bachelor in exercise science, and she's working toward her doctor of physical therapy currently. So she's really young, and still a student, still active. And again, I like a young, energetic person to lead the thing.
Yeah, I know. I had a little bit of experience with the ins and outs of cheerleading, not too much. I totally forgot to turn my TV down. I apologize to everybody. When you put on the headphones, like they're not noise canceling, but you can't forget other things are happening. So but anyway, yeah, I mean, I had friends at while I was at SLU, there were cheerleaders. Obviously I ran with the flags, which is close to that sort. I mean, the cheerleaders do it now. Obviously, because they switched from the massive steel poles on the flag to more manageable, what I assume is either aluminum or um, PVC. But yeah, so I mean, I kind of, I'm aware of how they operate during a game, or used to anyway. And it's good, like you said, to have a young, energetic coach. And it just, the only thing is, I wish some of these, like, they just feel like afterthoughts. And when you're putting out a product that you're asking people to pay for, to go to a game, to take in the entire atmosphere, um, there really shouldn't be any afterthoughts. And I don't know, just feels
Meaning,
like,
like you just want to see them put more effort into all of this stuff.
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, you're not super hyped when you take somebody from I mean, like, the cheerleaders are not competing, like they used to compete at the club level.
Mhm.
Um, so I mean, it's more of a, actual director position rather than, a coach or choreographer. I don't know. I would like to maybe have seen a little bit bigger hire, and it doesn't have to be that big. Just someone with head coaching experience already. I don't know. That's just
I,
my
I
opinion.
I'll counterpoint here, because I think fresh blood in both of these positions is maybe a sign that they are willing to kind of try some new things, give them a new look, a new sound, a new, I don't know, vibe to the overall game day experience. And I mean, being a recent grad, I mean, she was on the squad. I think hopefully people
Oh,
would pick up on that, but just in case, she was on the squad for 4 years. She was the team's rookie of the year. She won their Spirit Award one year, team MVP. 1 year, team captain, I'm assuming is a senior. And then won a leadership award and was on the student athlete advisory committee. So she seems to be like true SLU blue, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like just a
which I
hardcore
love.
Billiken.
I love
Yeah,
that part. That part
right,
I cannot disagree with or not counterpoint at all.
right. So
You know,
so maybe you're right. They are going like young and not somebody you have to like break the bank for or whatever, given that she's still an active student and has other, probably already starting to work and things like that. But I mean, I'm sure she understands the program for one, and I don't know. I like the idea of like young energy and the ability to kind of bring a new look
uh,
to the game day proceedings.
see, I would almost say the opposite to you on the new look for the cheerleading squad. I like that they are bringing in someone who is, young, energetic upstart, but also understands the cheerleading history here.
Uh-huh.
So I do appreciate that. With Grant Understall, though, I think your point is 100% correct. I think absolutely you have to bring in somebody. You have to change the vibes up because
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
vibes
Yeah.
that were just dog shit vibes.
Whole new songbook. What do you think? Whole new songbook. They're just going to go to like a nice, quiet, like smooth jazz kind of thing.
So, well, I just saw Anchorman was on TV, so
There
maybe
you
bring
go.
in the Yaz flute.
My high school, Chaminade, we, as much success as we've had in that basketball program lately, they don't, we'd never had like enough people for like a marching band or a pep, like a big pep band. We only had the jazz band. And so,
Mm.
so they only played a couple games a year. And just right away, you're like, this is completely the wrong vibe for a basketball game, but good jazz band for a high school jazz band. But yeah, it just kind of makes me laugh.
I can't. I never knew you went to Chaminade. Funny. Uh, how do you know a St. Louis kid went to a Catholic high school?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
he'll tell you.
yeah. There they
Uh,
it was the same joke when I lived in Chicago, and they had
oh
that
yeah.
for every Big Ten school. How could you tell somebody went here or there or whatever? And it ended with Notre Dame because there's so many Notre Dame grads in Chicago, and it was like they tell you.
Uh, I got nothing on men's basketball, man. Here's my men's basketball news for the day. I'm sharing this with you all. That's all I got. That's
All
the
right,
that's the best vibes I can bring.
I do have one thing I saw on Twitter. Because I luckily as I was putting my daughter down to bed before this, and as she started snoring, I'm scrolling through Twitter, and I did get down far enough to see where Verbal Commits had listed. We did offer a new guy who I actually had a little bit of familiarity with, 2025 recruit named Parker Jefferson, and the reason I knew his name is because he was a recruit of Phil Forte.
Mm.
He's a Texas kid. He's like a 6'9" power forward out of Waxahachie, I guess is how you say it, Texas. Um, and he's a really good recruit too. I mean, like the kid's got offers from LSU, Texas A&M, TCU, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, SMU, Iowa, Central Florida, a couple other schools, smaller conference schools as well. And he's definitely one of those guys where you got to wonder, Zach, like, because he's a legit 4-star. He's been pretty highly rated, at least since his freshman year, if not earlier. And we've talked before about what's the move when you get into the pool when it's already crowded and you're kind of an outsider, right? Because that's a lot of Texas-based power conference schools recruiting him. And what does SLU do to jump past those, right? Especially when
Back
like
up the
they've
Brinks truck.
well, I mean, they've got that football NIL money. They've
Yeah, I
got that
know.
that stupid SEC Big 12 football money that we can't compete with. So I'm curious to see how that develops, and I'll have more to say. I'll do kind of a write up on our Twitter or whatever the app is called now. Um, I'll have more to say about his game and everything, but Parker Jefferson is named out of Waxahachie, and yeah, like I said, a kid I knew, but just ever since Forte left, I hadn't kind of updated because I assumed he was just going to be a Forte recruit, and now here he is, a Charles Thomas offer. So that's one new offer, and I'm kind of looking through our grid right now. at other ones, and I don't think we have any that we haven't already covered on other shows. So that'll be it for now. But at least it's one little thing, right? It's one little thing on the men's basketball side.
Also, Austin McBroom is in hot water again. Go figure. So there's that. You can sleep well tonight knowing that Austin McBroom is going to get caught up in another scam. Women's soccer, Pete. We've got some grad transfers. Actually, we have one grad transfer and then another one that was made official that we were all aware of. And I'm not sure we talked about him.
I thought we talked about her before, but just in case we didn't, Izzy Lubert, I'm not sure.
It's Lubert.
It's got to be Lubert, right?
Yeah, I'm like, it's so funny because all these names just sound like fluorescent to me. Like
all the old French names.
Yeah. Leighton is 100. Like she has to be related to the old Dare officer Leighton. Like I don't know if anybody else had Officer Leighton as Dare, but yeah, it has to be.
So we'll circle back to her, but Izzy Lubert, who I think we talked about, Arkansas transfer. She's a sophomore defender. She's left-footed. She's originally from Jeff City, and I think she went to Capital City High School. She played in 13 games as a freshman, started 2. I think her biggest minutes of the year came against SLU. So we got a good look at her in person, actually. The staff did. So I think we talked about her before. Exciting to get her in as a transfer, but Liv Layton, Zach, to get back to North County, grad transfer, and this is one we hadn't talked about before.
No, she's a 5'3" midfield grad transfer out of Colorado State, Forrestal, Missouri. Is that out? Like, is that like Wentzville, or is that like Florissant area? I never remember.
No, I think that one is actually farther out. It's like if you get past Wentzville, like on the way to Wright City.
That's what. Okay, so
yeah, it's out that way.
Oh my. First thing I get is like a big barn and like Big Joe's Safari Petting Zoo.
When you look at the
I just googled Forrestal, yeah. And she went to Incarnate Word Academy, which I don't know, because I think about basketball all the time, and high school is such the like it's always the high school first, right? Of where these players came from. But with soccer, it's always the club. It feels like the club is more important than the high school. But she was at Incarnate Word Academy, and I feel like we don't have as many Incarnate Word players as in soccer either, but I think that's not true.
I always think of Incarnate Word more as the basketball power, right?
Yeah,
like they've always been that basketball school. And when I think of soccer, I'm thinking like Narings Hall and
St. Joe's.
And some of those other schools for soccer. So it's kind of interesting to see Incarnate Word on the soccer side. Yeah. And by the way, if she was in Forrestal driving into Incarnate Word every day, that's a heck of a commute. There were guys in my class who came in from Lake St. Louis every day, and this is even farther out. So anyway, that's a long.
We got to apologize to Emily Grork because she is also an Incarnate Word Academy.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. I mean, we've got like St. Joe's in Puricelli, Visitation.
Yeah.
Yeah, Liv Layton, Incarnate Word, Emily Grork, Incarnate Word. You got Narings Hall, Jess Pricer, Narings Hall, Nina Pricer. Good bet they're related. Hey, France. Oh, I didn't realize Abby Miller went to Francis Hall North. That's wild. Why did I not know that? Should I know that? I shouldn't know that as a 33-year-old dude. I shouldn't know that. Lindsay Hackle, Narings Hall. But yeah, so not as many Incarnate Word players, but yeah, we do have some.
So speaking of Layton's club teams, actually plays for St. Louis Scott Gallagher, and she ends up out of Colorado State, and in 4 seasons there, she plays 61 games. She starts 43 of them, 9 goals, 27 points. Do you know much about her as a player? Like what kind of a game she brings to SLU?
No, it seems like though, midfield, I don't know. My guess is 9, that classic 9.
Mhm.
I act like I know exactly what that means, and I have no idea.
Well,
Um,
Coach Shields says her experience, her athleticism, her soccer IQ will make a significant impact on our back line. Oh, I'm reading the wrong
mhm.
bio. Wow, wow, wow.
Good job.
Leighton. Okay, that was Izzy. Wrong one. Okay. So she brings tremendous experience, outstanding career at Colorado State, add to the sophistication and production of our attacking group.
Yeah.
And she calls her a culture fit. It will greatly enhance the positive culture of our program.
Yeah,
Uh,
maybe like an attacking midfielder, center
attacking
attacking
mid.
mid.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, I like
that
it.
4-3-3 with a diamond in the middle.
And
That-
coming in as a grad transfer, I guess there's some expectation that she'll be playing quite a bit as well.
yeah.
Even in a pretty loaded group we've got.
It's pretty unbelievable how much it feels like our current players are bringing players home. I mean, obviously, the coaching staff is very much involved, but it always feels like when a player comes home, it's a player connection thing.
Yeah, and I think their culture is undeniable,
Yeah.
and the chance to kind of come home and play for what feels like it's just going to be a solid top 25 program for this foreseeable future, dominant in their conference, nationally competitive, playing for a top 16 seed in the tournament. I think that's just going to be the goal every year for this program. And
Uh,
to come home and do that, I think is probably not something some of these players who left, 4 or 5 or 6 years ago thought that they might be doing, but SLU just keeps getting better.
I mean, you got to think about it. Like, yeah, it's awesome to go and play high level, you know, SEC women's soccer, ACC women's soccer, Pac-12 women's soccer. But like all these players that are getting decent minutes, big minutes on teams that are just falling short of the NCAA tournament,
Mhm.
shit. You want to come to SLU? You gonna make an NCAA tournament.
Yeah,
It's like
it's a good pitch. I
it's
mean,
a
yeah,
great pitch. I mean, I would take it in a heartbeat.
when you come from what generally is going to be a one bid league, and you've made what 5 tournaments in a row.
Yeah. That's
Um,
tough. That
it's
is tough to like. I don't know how much of a I don't know. I would say it's at least on par with coming out of an SEC school, and that's an insane accomplishment.
it really is. And even the year that they were kind of down in the regular season, they still pulled off the tournament win. So it just feels like such a nothing in this world is guaranteed, especially when you're transferring, you've got one more shot, but it feels like a pretty solid bet if you're a player who's kind of looking at her options for a 5th year.
Yeah, I think I'm really excited to get this season going, and I mean, we are so close to Billiken soccer, and it's going to be a really fun fall. I think men's soccer, what did I say? First exhibition is on the 12th.
Yeah,
Um,
and then the women start on the 8th.
yeah, I'm excited. And of course, I think volleyball starts on the 9th in Carbondale.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot happening, exciting stuff to come out of Billiken Athletics, at least on the in the fall.
Well, volleyball is actually the 19th in
19th,
Carbondale.
that's what it is,
19th,
19th.
yeah.
Um, yeah. Pete, should we ask what if?
I think we should, Zach. And these are some man, when did we kind of put a call out for these? It's probably been almost a year that
Yeah.
we've kind of been sitting on this topic, saying we were going to get to it, waiting for kind of a slow week to get through these.
Yeah.
And it's we don't have a whole lot of them, but I think the exercise here was really to ask about the times where that really feel like a missed opportunity. And this is a program with a lot of them, right? Like
A
anytime you felt
hinge
like we've
point.
had a hinge point or a time we've had a little momentum that we suddenly lost. a time where we zigged when we could have zagged, a time when we were down, when had we been up, maybe things could have broken differently. There are a lot of those in SLU basketball history, and I want to go through those now, Zach. I think we've got some really good ones. Again, most of these were kind of submitted by listeners or Twitter followers, but I think they're all pretty good.
Yeah, we'll start with we're gonna run through them, and then I'll let Peter talk about which one or ones we're gonna get to. It depends on how deep we go on the first one. What if the 2020 team didn't get COVID? What if Rick Majerus stays healthy, and for how long? What if the AD doesn't hold on to Jim Cruz? Whether it's the national coaching search prior to the 12-13 season, or what about a national coaching search after his interim season? This one's really deep cut, I think, is what if Craig Upchurch had been admitted? Because I guarantee you, like 75% of our listeners only know the name Craig Upchurch and don't know what that is all about. And even I really don't, because if I don't, nobody else will, because I'm a psycho. What if Jason Tatum chose SLU? That's topical with everything on the board the last week or so. What if Larry Hughes stayed for his sophomore season? What if the Billikens avoid the scandals? We're talking situation 1 and 2, as they've be known, which is just the worst way to describe them. But yes, here we are. What if SLU got into the Big East? Pete, what are we going to roll with here first?
Well, let's go back to that COVID one. And one of the reasons I want to start there, well, there's a couple reasons, because one of them is,
he tells me one thing, he zigs when he could zag. Unbelievable. This guy. Well, I had the whole thing prepared, and he just zagged on me.
Oh, did you want me to start with the one that I thought?
No, just go ahead. We'll go. No, well, no, okay, I had two on the set up on the thumbnail. I had two picked because I had the one that you told me, and then one that I assumed you were going to pick, and then you zagged on me.
I see. So you wanted me to, okay, then let's go with the one I told you then.
Okay.
And as my strongest, I think, was the question, like yes, which one of these do I think is the biggest deal? And so for me, it's the last one. It's what if SLU got into the Big East? And the way that this is, we have footnoted here, is it's either by being chosen over Creighton or Butler, or if the league had gone bigger and taken, like something like Creighton, Butler, Dayton, and SLU. And I'd have to kind of look at the timing of all of those as well, right? Like, because part of my question is, well, what if we had done that in I guess we wouldn't have had the opportunity, but back when Conference USA kind of broke up and the Big East expanded, like that would have been one potential entry point. And I think that's when Marquette went, right? Marquette and DePaul and some of the other teams that we were with in Conference USA. But we didn't have football, and that it just wasn't getting, like, Cincinnati went, and that's when the Big East got weird. It had like the football half and the non-football half. I don't know if SLU was ever realistically in play for that. We didn't have the Chicago market that DePaul had. We didn't have the recent Final Four run that Marquette had, and not to mention a little more history there as well. So yeah, I think you're looking more at like when the Big East became more like what it is now, and they end up with Creighton and Xavier over us, and Butler, and at various points, various years, right? And the reason I think this is the biggest deal is just because think of how insecure this program feels right now, and think of how different it would feel had we been in the Big East. Butler very recently in the horizon, Creighton in the Missouri Valley. Those feel like eons ago in terms of like what has happened in college sports since they went to the Big East. Like the perception of those programs, what they are, what they're capable of, completely different. And you can argue that Butler hasn't really done much in the Big East. And I've seen people argue that they're in over their heads, right? Like they've just were never really that level of program. I mean, I would argue otherwise. I mean, I think they're unfortunately in kind of a down cycle as a program, but there's no reason they can't be a competitive Big East team. The security, and even those fans, you know, in the Big East, like I know even Big East teams, given the way that college athletics are going right now, with power conferences sort of gobbling up everything and you know, walling off the sandbox in more ways than one, and a lot of it having to do with football. I know a non-football power conference is kind of, you know, nervous, you know. That said, they've won more recent national championships than any other conference. People love the conference as a brand. The product is great. There are a lot of really strong teams in that conference every single year. And yeah, your DePauls and your St. John's and a couple others have kind of struggled there. Butler, since they've joined, but and maybe SLU would be just like DePaul there, right? Maybe there would be years where we would really be winning one or two games and just getting our butts kicked. But I would rather have that situation than where we are right now, because the A10 has morphed in front of our faces into a single bid conference. And it looks like it's going to be one again this season. Like I squint and I don't see two teams that are going to grab at-large bids in this league. I hope I'm wrong. I really, really hope I'm wrong, because it used to be at least a two-bid league, usually more. And that's kind of what we thought we were getting in the A10. We never fooled ourselves into thinking that we were in a power conference, but we knew we were better off than had we gone to the Valley or other conferences that are generally going to be single bid leagues.
And unfortunately, now we're not sure.
And the way that college athletics has rapidly developed, we're just not sure. I would rather be the team that doesn't get in every year in a league that sends 7-8 teams to the tournament, and have, you know, basically more of a 50-50 shot or better at getting a bid than a top half team in a league that's only going to get one or two bids. And that's the reality we're in. And it's all about that tournament, because again, circling back to where Creighton and Butler and DePaul and these programs are now, what they're capable of doing, even if they're not always achieving up to that, it's just completely different. We can point to our facilities, we can point to our market, anything like that, our culture or academic institution, anything, but it doesn't matter if we're not in a league that is really that competitive. I like the A10. I don't have anything against the A10. I think it's more circumstantial than anything that the A10 has done wrong. We're just in an unfortunate position where college athletics, the power balance has the rich have gotten richer and richer, and the gap has widened, right? The wealth gap has really widened. And at the same time, we just have not any programs, arguably VCU, but we really haven't had any programs that have really sustained success. Had we a few programs, like if a SLU and a Dayton and somebody else had been able to really, you know, be a 2 out of every 3 year tournament team, maybe it would feel a little bit different, but nobody's been able to do it. And we haven't gotten any favors from the outside world. And I think that's everything. You know, we can look at all of these other scenarios and think like, man, that could have changed everything. And maybe it would have. Maybe the butterfly effect from one of those would have made SLU a power conference team today. I don't know. But to me, that's everything right now, is the fact that we're not in that league.
Yeah. And I mean, I think you can look back honestly and say, you know, where did it go off track? Because you look at, I mean, Biondi would have been about it. You know, he goes ahead and fires Soderberg over Cheryl Levick's back. Levick, I still think, is one of the top athletic directors that we've ever had. No doubt, even though she was here for a short time, I still think she was fantastic. Of course, she had a bad hire in Jimmy Gray. but like, Shimmy decide or not Shimmy, Cheryl Levick resigns because Biondi goes over her head. I think those two would have worked well together in tandem. Obviously with Biondi in power, you have him with hands on with Chris May. And I think we probably, I don't know. Like, I think with Cheryl Levick, Cheryl would have probably been a little more, what do you call it? Had a little more ambition, a little more ambitious with the program. I don't think Chris May is a risk taker. I don't think he's ever been a risk taker. And I think we would have been in a better position with Levick to enter the Big East and have our programs in a position to go to the Big East. Now, I say that if Soderbergh's still the coach, Cheryl Levick still the AD, does this program progress under Brad Soderbergh? I don't know. He's been an unbelievable assistant at Virginia. He's won national championship there. He didn't have a great tenure at Lindenwood. It was fine. I think they did well, but again, so, there's, it's kind of funny where you make plays like going and getting Rick Majerus to improve your program, but you cut off your nose to spite your face in that you lose an athletic director that with ambition, who, she wasn't even that young, but she had that energy. She had energy. She had that Shimmy Gray Miller energy, that Ann Cordes energy, that Rebecca Tillett energy, that again, she had that energy that you could just was infectious. And I don't know. Do you think that, where do you weigh those two things?
Well, we're getting so that's the question, right? Because
we're going down a rabbit hole, baby.
You've got your internal factors and you've got your external factors. So if I'm looking at the Big East expansion timeline, like I said before, it's 2005. It's right when I graduate that Cincinnati, DePaul, Louisville, Marquette, South Florida go to the Big East. 3 of those schools, Cincinnati, Louisville, South Florida, have football. Just on the merits of basketball, there's no way South Florida gets in above most of the other programs in Conference USA. But they've got a football program that they're at the time looking like they're committing to. And, it gives the Big East a full East Coast presence. I know they've got some other like more Southern teams at the time. And so yeah, it looks like a more full East Coast conference. You get some football with that. You've got eight teams that have football, 8 without. DePaul and Marquette over us. I've already explained why they got that. But
bastards.
Cheryl was not there at the time. Doug Woolard was when that decision would have been happening. Yeah. And Doug Woolard, I'll just say it, sucked. He was a horrible athletic director. I know because I worked in the athletic department.
King.
His deputy, his assistant, Lori Flanagan, who's now the AD at UMSL, sucked. She was horrible to work under. They pinched pennies. They played favorites. They were, Doug just basically hid in his office as far as I can tell. They were not great fundraisers. They completely lacked charisma. You barely saw them around. Awful, both of them. I have nothing good to say about them. And Biondi, people give him a lot of credit for some of the business-minded things he did around SLU, and some worked and some I'll never understand. He was not a nice guy, not a friendly guy. I'm saying was. I mean, he's still with us. He's just not the president anymore. But like, my point is, like, he was there for a long time over an athletic department that sucked. And that if you were inside of that program, inside the day-to-day in West Pine Gym, it is shocking that we were in the same conference as schools like Memphis and Louisville and Cincinnati and some of those other like strong Conference USA programs, right? If the Big East came and kicked the tires at SLU at all before that expansion, it was a pretty easy decision not to go with us. Right. We didn't have the leadership in place. We didn't have the facilities, nothing. So right after that, Cheryl Levitt comes in, like you say. But the Big East is kind of steady state for a while. It's not until 2013 that then the next big blow up is, right? And that's when you've got let's see. So Marquette and DePaul are already there. Villanova, Seton Hall, St. John's, Providence, Georgetown are already there, but that's when they bring in Xavier, Butler, and Creighton all at the same time, right? And then UConn doesn't come in until 2020. So I guess Xavier, Butler, and Creighton did all come in at the same time, and that's the one where you look and go, is that the time when we could have gotten in? Was there a chance the conference would have gone bigger? Maybe SLU and Dayton just didn't feel like value adds, to go to 12 instead of 10 at the time. I don't know what all of those backroom conversations are. There are a lot of people who claim that there were politics, right? Because Biondi was still at SLU when this was happening. Yeah. And they're claiming that there were politics and that he was hated by the presidents of Creighton and Marquette. I've heard all these things. I don't know the inside Jesuit baseball backroom politics. I have no idea. I would not be for surprised.
Others right there.
I would not be surprised if Biondi were not well liked by some of those people. But so you've got basically an 8-year gap there, right? Where you've got you've got Biondi for the whole thing, but you've got the AD changes to Levick. Biondi goes over her head. And what year would this have been? 2000, just a couple years
6
later.
or 7.
Yeah, to get Majerus, right? Because Soderbergh, 06, 07 was his last season.
I believe 08 was Majerus's introductory. I was in college, but not at SLU.
So Majerus has now got the program where he wants it in 2012, the season ending 2012, and then 2013 when this happens. And I think that's why it stings so bad, because that was a real high point in how our program was performing. But Majerus had also just died at the end of 2012. Linked. Yeah. I mean, it was like I would have to look at the specific timing of when they jumped, because it was really 2013 that the new conference took form. But I guess decisions may have been made at the time. But regardless of that, our program was still doing really well, and that's kind of why it stings a little bit. And Biondi was still there, and then you spend all those years pining for the Big East, hoping that they expand, and when they do, they just take on UConn. They go to a 20-game schedule, and that's that for the next few years. UConn's already won a national championship since joining. Villanova's won multiple national championships pretty recently. This conference is awesome. We obviously want to be part of it. But since that era when we didn't get picked, what have we done to justify our inclusion in it, right? Our facilities remain very good. We're adding another new facility. We still have a nice TV market. We've made one tournament since 2014.
Yeah.
That doesn't scream invite me.
Where do you stand on non-rev sports and their impact?
It's a consideration, but that's not where these conferences make their money, right? I think our non-rev stuff actually would be a positive in our column. Our soccer programs are very good. Big East soccer is very good. Xavier was not a great program, but since joining the Big East, they've really become a nationally competitive program on the men's and women's side pretty consistently. So some of those schools have kind of boosted their image, their success since joining the Big East. Some of them, Creighton, UConn, were already really good in soccer, for example. UConn's a really good baseball school, actually, and the Big East has actually a smaller baseball conference than the A10. I think they only have 8 teams. I think on the non-rev side, I think we'd be a plus, even if some of those facilities aren't great. I think the O'Loughlin Center kind of changes things there as well, and makes us look more attractive from a non-rev side. But again, I think like they just, unless they really need more teams,
it would have to be like 2 Final Fours in a row, 2 College Cups in a row. It would have to be at least 1 national championship, probably 2, 3 from non-rev perspective. Just constant domination.
Maybe because like I don't know. I'm
For
trying to
that,
think of.
I'm talking for it to like kind of almost take precedence and carry basketball. Like
Sure.
you'd be like, oh yeah, hey, like our basketball team is competitive, but like look at what else we can bring.
Yeah. And but think about like other schools that have, Akron, Marshall,
Yeah.
have other conferences compounding down the door for them recently. Like, look, I know Marshall just moved, I think, to the Sun Belt. And I think that was really more football motivated, right? Like there are other schools that have had pretty strong soccer programs, even winning national titles. Baseball, less so. I mean, it seems like by the time you get to the College World Series, it's kind of funneled down to the SEC schools and a couple others, a few Big 12 and Pac 12 kind of schools.
And maybe one like Big South.
Yeah, the occasional like Fullerton, like that kind of school will get in. But I just don't think those are the things that are making conferences pull you out. Cal State Fullerton can be great in baseball for decades, and the Pac-12 is not going to pull them out of the Big West because they're just not there on the other stuff. So yeah, Zach. I mean, to me, this is the biggest what if. This is the biggest miss, and I don't know how much of a miss it really was. I don't know if we were ever really in the running seriously. I don't know. And unless there is some sort of pressure on the Big East to expand to I don't know if we'd even be number 12 if they take a 12th. But if they expand to something like 14 or 16, I got to think at that point we're looking a little better. But I don't know what forces them to do that at this point. I don't know what Fox is going to say when their deal comes up again.
The only upside to not being in the Big East right now is obviously the fact that they have a non-rev deal with Flow Sports.
That's true. Yes. Yeah. Like people will never see soccer games again. Yeah.
I just, that's insane to me. I mean, like, do you think the athletic department has aspirations? Like, are they actively interested in the Big East? Like, we obviously know that the fans are, but is Chris May really thinking about it?
I think everybody would jump at the chance and would love that. I think, and that's true of May, Postello, the board of trustees. Whether their actions and their philosophies align us with that possibility is another question. And I think a lot of people think,
I think,
yeah, and I think a lot of other people think that it doesn't put us in that direction. But Chris May absolutely wants us in the Big East. Absolutely. I have no doubt in my mind. I don't know what he can do. I mean, I think he's a really great fundraiser. I don't know about.
I was ready to respond. I wasn't sure what you were gonna say. He was a really great what.
I think that's the number one skill. I think that's the number one skill he brings as an athletic director. He's a great fundraiser. And I think he absolutely, is a smart enough guy to know that the Big East would be transformational for SLU. And yeah, I mean, like, and who wouldn't want more money? It's like, I'm running an athletic department that becomes a bigger revenue generator like that. Like, come on, he knows that. Everybody knows the deal. It's just a matter of like, I don't know what all of us can do. Like, if our basketball team was just crushing it year in, year out, it's just it would be a much different conversation, because then you would have fans from all over clamoring for this. But I can tell you, as someone who lives in a Big East city, and knows alums from probably more than half of Big East schools, nobody's asking for it. Nobody's asking for SLU. Nobody's asking for Dayton. Most of them are not asking for Gonzaga or any of the other, crazier ideas that have come up. They love what that conference is right now. The 20 game round robin home and home schedule, the a lot of the historical rivalries that are in that conference, they absolutely love it. And I don't think anybody from a fan perspective, I don't think any of them want to change that. If a SLU or a Dayton or one of those schools were like a national powerhouse and they had a chance to add them, another team that would be like a perennial threat, then absolutely they would. But we're not that. We've never been that. And until we somehow become that, I don't think anybody's asking for us. But it's chicken and egg, because I don't know how we become that from the A10.
God damn it, Peter. That was my next question.
Well, sorry to pour cold water on not just the topic, but your next question there, Zach. But
yeah, how do we improve? How do we fix this basketball program? Let's answer the question right here, right now. And let's turn this thing around.
Well, I don't know if I'm going to answer this until they put me on payroll.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. If you can do something well, don't do it for free. But to be honest, you've been posting recruiting information for 20 years now. And I don't think you're collecting checks from Steve Rogers.
No, that's true. I've been giving that away for free. But it's been more like 10 years. I think I started doing it during the Cruz era.
Why did you start doing it?
Because I wanted a place where I could just go look at all of like our offers and who they were and who else was recruiting them and what our recruiting picture looked like. And I wanted it all in one place. And even the ones behind the paywall that we had at the time were very
Wait a minute,
incomplete.
hold on. Wait a minute. This is news to me. Dude, we should interview each other one time. Just ask all the questions, because I'm gonna leave this but I got a question, because I didn't know that, but you said something. I don't want to like reveal it because I think it'd be interesting to get into later. But you said something that I want to know the answer to. Yeah, I thought that was it's interesting the way you said that.
But I mean, yeah, but I just wanted all of the information in one place, and I realized after a while that what I wanted didn't exist, so I just had to go do it. And
unbelievable.
Lately, I've not been keeping up on top of it as much as I would like. It's a little more incomplete, but I at least have all the offered players up there.
I think that's all we ask for, if nothing, if not even less. Pete, what do we want to get into next here?
Well, what's yours, Zach? I mean, you kind of hinted that you had tabs open to discuss another subject. So why don't we start there?
I don't have tabs. I just was working on the thumbnail and I put Jim Cruz's face with an X through it and said, "What if?"
So that's what it was. It was the thumbnail.
Yeah. I mean, we could go down this coaching carousel and it would take probably an hour. But yeah, I mean, let's talk about Jim Cruz, man.
So the question here to me is, so the way we have this worded is, what if the athletic director doesn't retain Jim Cruz? So this would be, let's see. So 2012, March of 2012 is when Majerus has his last press conference as an active head coach, right? Because, or at least like post-game presser, because he gets sick coming into the 2012-2013 season. And that's when Cruz is named interim coach, kind of leaves things as they are. We're good again. One more season with that big class of seniors, 2013-2014. But I guess he'd been made head coach by that season, right? Like they removed the interim tag and made him head coach in what I guess would have been spring of 2013.
Yeah.
That's the right
timeline? I don't remember. I'm trying to remember if Majerus passed in the fall or the spring.
It was like
it was
December.
Before the season, I thought.
No, it was like mid-season.
Okay.
or like early mid-season, because he really was looking sick around, like he said he was going to take some time, and I think his health really dipped around October. And then I think December is when the funeral and everything was. And then Cruz finished out that season. And then after that season, which he did an excellent job of kind of like leaving the the thing on autopilot, right?
Yeah.
Guiding everybody through what Majerus would have done.
I mean,
That's when they make him the head coach.
the players have absolutely come out and said they were coaching themselves.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's more or less the assumption that everybody had.
It's not us implicating it. It's like, well, it's the players saying it themselves.
And you can only do that for so long, right? Because even their senior year, and they go on that incredible winning streak, but they were not as good as they were the 2 previous years. They just weren't. There, any metrics you look at, their efficiency was down on both ends. Their margin of victory was way down. Jordair Jet being clutch and basically willing them to win a lot of those games in that win streak made it happen. I think also the fact that was the year after Xavier, Temple, Butler, a number of schools leave, right? Because 2012, 2013, that year where he had them on autopilot, they were coaching themselves, was like the perfect A10 year. We had like all the great teams at once. And then they leave for the Big East. So part of the reason that win streak was possible is because our strength of schedule went down naturally by not playing Xavier twice, Butler twice, some of those other teams that we would have been playing. So I think there was that kind of weird little factor in there as well. But regardless, that's year 1 for him of a 5-year deal. And when that class graduates, and I kind of had
his contract,
and I knew I had started following the recruiting stuff at this point because I was really not feeling good about what was coming in after that big class graduated. I remember the feeling of like, oh, this is going to be more of a restart than people realize, after Jet, Lowe, McCall, all those guys move on, Evans, and that unfortunately came true. We go from 27-7, 2013-14 to 11-21 the next year. And I understand that it's going to be a rebuild, but man, oh man, Zach, I just, watching that, you just thought like, oh God, like it's gone. Like it's not just, we got some new guys in there, but Majerus will coach them up. They'll be fine. It was like, it was just gone. It was completely gone. And I feel bad for guys like Mike Crawford, who had already been around. But yeah, like looking at this roster, yeah, it was a restart. Malik Yarbrough was our leading scorer at 10 points a game as a freshman that season. Ash was right behind him as a transfer junior. And then you've got Crawford, McBroom, Roby, Bartley. Roby and Bartley were freshmen. Gilman was a freshman. Agbeko, sophomore. Reynolds was a freshman. Jolly was a freshman. I mean, look at those names. You know what I mean?
At what point do we have to start calling them by first names? Like you don't talk about somebody in the 80s or the 70s with just their last name. You got to throw context in there, their first name. But it's fun. Like it's, I mean, it's so weird because there were some players that were dudes and then there were just not dudes.
Well, it wasn't just that. What became clear to me that the next season, when we won 11 games again, was just like they weren't being coached up at all. There were guys there. Marcus Bartley was a really good shooter. Like that guy could really shoot. His ball handling was a problem, because he was really skinny, really soft with the ball, and he turned it over. But he clearly had a skill. Mike Crawford's a guy I would have taken as like my number 7, number 8 on any team, right? He just was not a guy that you build around as like a starting shooting guard. Ash, another one, like we needed him to be Javon Bess, and he just wasn't quite that, as like that junior transfer from a power conference. Malik Yarbrough was a kind of a little bit of a head case, but clearly had potential there. Like these were all guys who had. McBroom was another one, elite shooter. Like these are all guys who I know. I hate him too. But they were guys who at least had one skill you could coach up. Miles Reynolds ended up at Oklahoma. Javale Roby had a nice career for us in the end. some of these guys, obviously were mistakes, and Brett Jolly, just not a guy who should have gotten a scholarship. Gilman, I'm not sure he should have
Neufeld.
either. Right. Yeah. Some of these guys so
Welmer was serviceable.
he wasn't a great recruiter in that he didn't bring in guys who were like ready to step in and start and play. And then he couldn't coach him up.
Yeah.
And it was just, that
Player
became clear to
development
me
was terrible.
so fast. So, but I want to, Zach, one of the things I want to kind of ask you on this is that, do you think the bigger issue could be that we made him the interim coach in the first place, as opposed to someone else on the staff?
See, that's interesting because, I asked this question of a couple players, just kind of off the cuff, just shot him a text like, hey, talking about this. And, I don't know. We're living in a different time when I ask that question, because you think immediately you're going to see a mass exodus of players, right? If they go out and do a national coaching search, when, again, like, so we're talking removing the interim tag, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that last season would have been, what was that? As permanent head coach, it was Jet, Lowe, Evans, McCall, Mitchell. Ellis was gone.
Yeah, no, wait, you're talking about the
13,
season
14.
13, 14. So his last season with that class. Yeah. Ellis was gone by then, right? He wasn't that class, but it was Evans, Jet, Lowe, McCall. Barnett was the other senior.
That was his first season as full-time head coach.
Correct. Yep.
So the question on the table is, would those guys have left? And I don't think they would have, mostly because they had 1 year left on it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, again, a different world, NCAA wise. So, I mean, I say you rip the Band-Aid, honestly. I don't know where you go with it. And I don't know what happens, but I guess, I mean, obviously hindsight's 2020. But looking at all the factors, I think you could safely assume that you weren't going to lose everybody.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing I'm wondering is, like, if Cruz were not made interim head coach, who else would have been? Because you have Jim Weitzel, you have Jim Platt, both veteran coaches.
Platt was a problem.
But both veteran coaches with some head coaching experience with kind of mixed results. I don't know what it would have been like with either of them leading. I guess it would have been Weitzel. He was the associate head coach.
I think everybody kind of thought Weitzel, and he ended up at Buffalo, obviously, head coaching.
Yeah, and did pretty well there, actually. But the other assistant was Tanner Bronson. It was never going to be him. I don't think anybody thought that. He was the young guy. And it's funny because, like, when we think of assistants from that era, we think about Harriman and Jensen and some of the other guys who were a little more exciting, but by the time that we had to pick an interim head coach, those guys were gone.
Yeah.
Harriman the year before, Jensen would have been the year before that. So it seems like it would have been Weitzel or Cruz, maybe Platt, and that was it. Those were your choices.
I think
to me,
yeah.
I don't know if that's a super well made staff in hindsight, because that's kind of like
it's a very white
similar
staff.
Guys, similar age bracket, similar experience and backgrounds, and kind of like, it doesn't give you a lot of.
It's very boring, very like, vanilla. It's not. I mean, none of those guys seem like the guy that's gonna excite a recruit on a visit. Like, he's not gonna know how to. I mean, like, it reminds me of the story of, like, well, they took somebody had to take Jake Barnett bowling, and like the other dudes were out, like, going to the bars.
Right.
It's like everyone is like, you're just like, you're only gonna get dudes like Jake Barnett, and I don't want to come down as a diss on Barnett. You're just not gonna get, like, Jake Barnett was amazing in his role, but that's the only kind of, like, that just seems like the guy that's gonna be recruited is a guy who's very straight and narrow.
Right. So you wind up with guys like let's see, Roby, Bartley, Gilman, Reynolds,
Neufeld.
Jolly. Was that in Neufeld was the next year, but that was
Yeah.
that incoming freshman class. And I guess Ash would have been the transfer junior that year. McBroom was already there. Crawford was already there. Becco was already there. And John Manning was already there. So yeah, you're right. Like those are the guys you get. You either get guys who are kind of under recruited, or you get guys who are intriguing but flawed players. Like a Yarborough. Um, that's just you're right. You just don't have that. You don't have a lot of youth on that staff. You don't have exciting guys who seem like they can really recruit, and that's what you end up with.
So you go with a national coaching search, following that 12-13 season, right? Is that what we're saying? So I mean, you look at, some of the guys that left jobs. Rick Majerus retired.
I know.
Okay. Yeah.
I can't believe it's listed like that.
Yeah. Mark Macon, Randy Monroe, Seth Greenberg. He was, Seth Greenberg was fired. Jim Barron was fired. Frank Martin left for South Carolina. Imagine a world where Frank Martin becomes head coach at SLU.
Well, if South Carolina hired him, we were not in the price range.
Jim Christian was fired from TCU. Billy Gillespie was resigned from Texas Tech. Was that an issue? What was the issue there?
He was an issue when he was at Kentucky, which I know for sure because my my aunt or my wife's uncle and aunt went to Kentucky and were athletes, and I've always been kind of connected to the Kentucky athletic department. And they have stories about Billy Gillespie that were probably I'll put it nicely, problematic. He was
cancelable.
Yeah, he was an
Quinn
HR
Snyder
nightmare.
type stuff.
And yes, exactly, an HR nightmare for a university.
By the way, on the losing end of one of my favorite college basketball stories of all time, that 2003 or 6 Georgia team that was the last place in the SEC. Tornado hits the Georgia Dome.
Oh,
they have to play the rest of the tournament at Georgia Tech, and Georgia goes on and wins 4 games in 3 days.
Like almost like SLU a few years earlier.
I mean, no, but in 3 days.
In 3 days.
They had to play a morning game against Kentucky, in which Billy Gillespie did not want anything to do with that game. He was pissed that game was being played.
Yeah, sure, understandably.
Which surely led to his team losing. Then they had to play a night game. I don't remember if the night game was against Kentucky. I don't remember. But anyway, he was on the losing. He was the team that Georgia beat and then went on. I think they were the last place team in the SEC and went on and won the tournament. Jim Calhoun retired and then later unretired. Joe O'Brien, Mike, I have no idea. Roger Reed, Randy.
Yes,
Peel.
some of the ones at smaller schools, it's like,
Bruce Weber was fired from Illinois.
Yeah, so those are the ones that I'd be interested in, right? Like the guys who were fired from either bigger or similar level schools. Bruce Weber's an interesting name. Matt Doherty, I don't know necessarily that one, but Mike Davis at the time.
Doug Wojcik. I feel like that's kind of a popular name, but I could be mixing names.
Who else is available?
Chris Lowry got fired from SIU, but no, that would be no.
Yeah, at the time, that would have been a tough, right? That would have been a tough hire.
Wow, this is interesting.
It's not the strongest. It's not the strongest group, right? I mean, like when you're looking.
Rick Stansbury resigned from Mississippi State.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not great. I mean, you look at the coaches that were hired though. So these are obviously coaches that were in the price or not in the price range, but in the market to grab another job.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Jim Ferry was hired by Duquesne. Dan Hurley at Rhode Island.
Oh, people would have loved him.
Yeah. Bruce Weber, Kansas State. Let's see. Kevin Ollie, Connecticut.
Yeah, but I'm trying to look at a school like kind of
You got
who's
Pat Kelsey.
in
Pat
our price
Kelsey,
range.
Winthrop.
Yeah, and Pat Kelsey. So I remember him, leaving Xavier at the time for Winthrop, and a lot of people thought that was too low level a job for him,
Yeah.
and that he would have gone more like where he is now, like a Charlotte. But Xavier fans loved him as like kind of a guy to keep in their stable. So it's not surprising to me based on what I had heard about him here at Xavier that he's finding a lot of success at Charleston. But I don't know if we would have reached for him at that time. And guys like John Gross and Tim Miles would have been out of our price range at the time.
Barry Hinson, Southern Illinois. Barry
Danny
Hinson,
Manning going to Tulsa.
Barry Hinson would have been an interesting name because he feels somewhere between Majerus and Spoonhour in a way. Just kind of that kind of weird
He's
personality guy.
folksy,
Folksy, he's very folksy.
St. Louis loves a folksy coach.
Yeah.
I am not a Barry Henson guy at all. I think he's sub Spoon.
Yeah.
Like I think
yeah. I am certainly not like he puts off that vibe. He puts off the vibe.
Yeah, he's more like Spoon's goofy nephew or something. I never have thought highly of him. I would not have been pleased with that. He seems like a very valley ceiling kind of guy.
Here's a great name for you. Jamion Christian /hired at Mount St. Mary's.
Yeah. Wow. And he would have been young at the time.
Yes.
And then Jay Spoonhour to Eastern Illinois.
Which turned out to, he stayed there forever though.
That was like 11 years of nothing, basically.
Yeah. Richard Pitino hired at FIU.
Yep. That's an interesting one.
That is I don't know.
Yeah.
Where was Travis Ford at in his career at this point? Just out of curiosity.
He would have been at Oklahoma State by now.
Yeah, but yeah.
And would have had he would have had
that was after the 12-13
4 or
season.
5 years.
He had just come off. They went 13-5, third in the Big 12 and made the first round of the NCAA tournament.
Okay.
So he was going nowhere. He was on the upswing.
Right.
Oh my God. They went 3-15 his final year. Jesus Christ.
Yeah. But I guess like as we're looking through these names, there weren't a ton of names that jump out as like guys that feel like they would have been in our pocket at the time, like kind of that or strike zone, I guess is what I'm saying. Like some of the bigger names, and I don't know if this is with the gift of hindsight, but I think at the time we all knew Larry Eustace was already kind of an issue, and some of these other guys have not panned out necessarily. I don't know who we would have talked to in this group, right? And then we're looking at like, I guess this next group, you say national coaching search after his interim season. But it looks like a lot of the same names actually. Do I have that right?
Maybe I just screwed up. I think I screwed up here.
No, that's all right.
No. Yeah. I think I screwed up, but that's all right. I mean, I think I just double posted it, but
regardless, I mean, we're looking at the coaching changes around that time, and there's not a lot that jumps out at you as guys that would have been realistic, successful, people who are maybe from the area and at the right level at that time. It's tough to replace a guy like Rick Majerus, and you want to get it right. And I wonder how much how much consideration they gave to outside names before giving Cruz the job full time. I think they just thought, how can we not keep what we have this 2 years going?
Uh-huh.
And at the time, like I don't remember much of an outcry about the hire, right? I mean, I think people were kind of fine with the hire. I think people were just like, we've made the tournament twice in a row. We love these players. This team is great. They'll be back next season. So we know we'll be good for at least one more year. see what he can do after that. I don't think anybody imagined just how far and how fast we would fall.
Yeah, no. I mean, you look at these other coaches that I'm finding now, some interesting names. Brad Stevens left for the NBA. The Andy Enfield, Joe Dooley. I think Joe Dooley was a name we heard.
That is a name actually that I
Yeah.
remember at the time. Yeah.
Was
The
that a
Florida
name
Gulf
we
Coast.
heard after Cruz or before naming Cruz?
I bet that would have been after.
Yeah, because Enfield, this was when Andy Enfield, this was right after Dunk City.
Right. So Dooley would have been, yeah, Dooley would have been hired at Florida Gulf Coast that year
Yes, he was a
to replace Enfield. So he
yes.
would have been right. He would have been head coach at Florida Gulf Coast when Cruz was fired.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that
And,
was the yeah.
yeah, and he was like on his way to being conference coach of the year at that time.
He
So
was almost another Cruz. I think that was what a lot of people were afraid of with that name.
right, right. Yeah, I think so.
Holland, Ben Holland. I think Ben Holland was talked about.
At the time we hired
I don't
Ford.
remember. I know it was a name that people threw around.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's freaking interesting.
This is one where, yeah, I definitely want people to like hit us up with names we might be forgetting that may have been thrown out at the time.
Yeah.
But I just think when we were hiring Cruz, I think everybody just thought like, let's just roll
Let's
with
ride the
this.
wave. Yeah.
Because it wasn't like there was another Majerus out there who
Mm-mm.
was like somebody that we could and absolutely should hire. There was no obvious name, right? Like I know that there are guys who would have been successful. We just will never know. But nobody was the one that was like, oh yeah, you gotta put Cruz aside for this guy. You just can't miss this opportunity.
So I want to bring up a point that I have defended Chris May on this topic ever since it happened. But I want to ask you a trivia question before I do that, because it all ties in. You'll see. The NABC head coach of the year and the Sporting News head coach of the year were Jim Cruz. Who was named head coach of the year by the AP, the Henry Iba Award, and the Naismith College Coach of the Year?
There are 5 different college coach of the year awards.
Yes, there are.
Man, and Cruz got 2.
Yes.
Um,
Same person got 3.
So one guy got the other 3. Oh man, I have completely forgotten who this would be. At the time, it's I don't know, Bill Self.
Jim Larinaga.
Oh wow. Okay, that's
at
right.
Miami. And also fun one. Who was the who won both Freshman of the Year awards?
Oh, there's no way I'm gonna remember
It's
that.
Marcus Smart.
Oh, really?
It just happens to be Marcus Smart. That's why I brought it up. Otherwise, I wouldn't care.
That's great.
But no, yeah. No, okay. So the trivia question not trivia question, the tie-in to that is, do you blame Chris May or how much, I guess I could phrase it a different way. Would you have, do you blame anybody for retaining Jim Cruz?
I don't. May would have had been getting more information, I'm sure, calls from agents, people just contacting him about who he should hire, what he should do. But I'm guessing, putting myself in Chris May's mindset of fundraising and culture, he probably had every booster in his ear going, hang on to Jim Cruz, right? I'm just betting like what I know about our booster base and our fan base and everything like that. I think probably the voices saying, let's not lose what we've got right now. Let's not restart with these guys going into their senior year. Let's not get a new guy, new culture, new system in there right now. I think those voices overwhelmed whatever other pieces of information or voices that he was getting at the time. So I don't blame him at all. I think most people would have made the same decision unless they really, really had a guy that they believed in, because like that's the kind of thing. If you do not hire Jim Cruz, you bring in somebody else and it doesn't go well, you're not going to last long.
At what point do you start to blame Chris May for not seeing the writing on the wall? I mean, do you think it's that first season?
I did SLU ever really strike you
By
as
the way,
kind of place?
by the way, I do agree with you 100%. I think he had no choice. The minute Jim Cruz was named National Coach of the Year, he was screwed.
Oh yeah, he had his hands tied.
It was done.
He did, yeah. So I guess you're saying, should he have been let go after 2 years?
Yeah, I'm saying as soon as you go 11 and whatever, and you see that you've brought in guys that are throwing hook shots over the backboard. I mean, literally Adam Nollmeyer level.
Yeah. So okay, so he gets one more year, right? I don't know. I mean, I know that me personally, as a fan at the time, I was looking at that like, wow, we've got a bunch of nobodies. We're not good. We're not athletic. These guys are not going to be a group that turns it around next year. I know I personally saw them as that at the time, and I would have been happy to say, hey, this isn't working. But a SLU has never been the place that fires a guy after one down year, right? Gave him one more year and bought out two. And I don't know, that's not entirely unreasonable. It just, my God, what a bad 2 years that was.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so at the end of the day, what happens then? I mean, like, there's absolutely no guarantee that we make it back to the tournament. I mean, do you take those 2 years, those 3 or 2 NCAA tournaments under Cruz? And I mean, do you reconcile that with the fact that he tanked the program afterwards? Or, I mean,
most fans seem to have reconciled it by giving Majerus credit for all 3 tournaments.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like all 3 of those
You're
seasons,
looking at one of them, Pete.
People just call that the Majerus era.
Yes.
And then when they say
the Majerus era stunk for a lot of it.
When they say the Cruz era, they're talking about those 2 horrible seasons afterwards.
Yes.
And that is true to a fan. Like every single person I talk to, they're just like, they have nothing good to say about Cruz. Majerus gets all the credit for those winning seasons, even though he only was there for one of them.
Yeah.
It's wild to think about.
It's very funny.
And part of that is a little unfair because Cruz was factually the head coach of that team. But like you said, a lot of the players that we've talked to or that you've talked to in the previous iteration of this show have flat out said, yeah, we just knew what to do. And that's because Majerus coached skills.
It was painfully obvious watching Grandy Glaze that there was no passing down of information.
Yeah, there was you're right. You're everybody behind those.
You know what? I liked him too. I enjoyed his time as a Billiken and nothing else after. I have enjoyed none of his post basketball career.
I like the pure chaos and unpredictability that he brought to the floor, because like for as big and strong as he was not like a fluid athlete. No. And like you just never knew like when he was going to like chase a loose ball and kill somebody. Like he was a bull in a china shop, a completely unpredictable force on the floor.
He was Malik Yarborough before Malik Yarborough.
But without the scoring ability.
Yes.
And I would have been curious to see what Majerus would have done to him with more time, right? Because clearly that's a guy that needed to be reined in a little bit and given some guardrails.
There's no way Austin McBroom survives if Majerus is still around, right? Like that dude's gone after like one practice.
I think he would have done something to piss Majerus off. Yeah.
He did.
Yeah.
Actually, wasn't that what Dwayne Evans, didn't somebody say that like Austin McBroom just left one day and never came back? Like in this middle of summer or something?
That sounds right. But I don't remember.
Or was it somebody else? I remember Ruben Cotto just like never came back from the Dominican one time.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Right. Well, there were Puerto Rico, I think.
Oh,
Yeah, I think Puerto
yes.
Rico. But there were a lot of guys in the Majerus era who didn't pan out, who didn't last long, and
that was kind of by design.
That's right. I mean, everything we know about Majerus makes that absolutely unsurprising, right? Like there were guys who stuck it out and became fantastic players who are still playing today, a decade later. And then there were a lot of guys who just immediately were like, nope, not for me. I'm gone. And,
be
and that's
interesting
fine.
to
That's how it
see
goes.
the Majerus era in the open transfer market.
Oh God. Yeah. I mean, he had plenty of outbound transfers before that, when guys were willing to sit here.
Yeah. Well, I think we what ifed quite a bit this evening.
Yeah, and I think we tackled probably the biggest ones.
Yeah.
So I think next time we do a show, we can hit the others and they'll be pretty good. But Zach, I think we got to let people know. Next week I'm on vacation, so I think we're gonna probably take a week off here.
Yeah, that's fine with me. Obviously, if something happens or whatever, maybe I'll hop on and pontificate for 30 minutes on Dandridge or whatever. But yeah, now this was fun. And honestly, I think we should definitely do that interview episode where we just come up with questions to ask each other that we've always just wanted to, because we literally just sit here and chat. And I don't think we've ever really got into like the recesses of our fandom. It's, I enjoy kind of asking you the questions. Cause I mean, you're way more of a deep thinker than I am. And really much of my opinion really just comes off the cuff. And when you say something, it'll start me on a thought exercise and, I can talk it out. So I enjoy just kind of asking you what you think and then going from there. So it's fun.
But also, I mean, like, yeah, you bring a much different perspective, but I think there are nobody has had the Billiken fan experience that you have. So I think there are a lot of things to get in there from your perspective too, that,
no, but I just don't I don't keep that stuff in my brain because it doesn't have that capacity. So it has to be like jogged a little bit. And I think like, I don't write stuff down. I don't, I like to hear what you have to say about it. And then I'll be like, oh yeah, my thought is this, but yeah, I mean, my experience has been very, very unique and very weird.
We're going to have to do that 2-way interview sometime for sure.
All right, guys, that does it for this week. Thank you guys again for listening. I hope you enjoyed this little semi off the cuff chat. Don't forget to subscribe on all platforms, comment, feed the algorithm on YouTube, please, please, please. That'll do it. As always, Pete, go Bills.
Go Bills.